Chapter 10. A delightful initiation into a hermit's existence. 4 weeks of torment, tossing, and illness. Oh, these harsh winds embitter northern skies, the impassable roads, and the sluggish country doctors. Oh, the absence of human faces. And worse still, Kenneth's grim warning that I won't be stepping outside until spring. Mr. Heathcliff just paid me a visit. About a week ago, he sent over a pair of grouse, the last of the season. Scoundrel! He's not entirely blameless for this illness of mine, and I was tempted to tell him so. But how could I offend a man who kindly sat by my bedside for a whole hour, discussing anything but pills, potions, blisters, and leeches? This is a rare moment of ease. I'm too weak to read, yet I feel I could enjoy something engaging. Oh, why not have Mrs. Dean continue her story? I can recall the main events up to where she left off. Yes, I remember her hero had disappeared, unheard of for 3 years, and the heroine had married. I'll ring for her. She'll be pleased to find me in a mood for cheerful conversation. Mrs. Dean arrived. "It's 20 minutes until you need to take your medicine, sir," she began. "Forget about it," I replied. "I want to." "The doctor insists you must stop taking the powders." "Fine by me. Don't interrupt. Come, sit here. Keep your hands away from that bitter lineup of bottles. Take out your knitting. That's better. Now continue with Mr. Heathcliff's story from where you left off. Did he finish his education abroad and return as a gentleman? Or did he secure a scholarship at college, flee to America, and earn fuss-muffy shedding blood in his adopted country? Or perhaps he made a quick fortune on England's roads? He might have dabbled in all those paths, Mr. Lockwood. But I can't vouch for any. I mentioned before that I don't know how he made his money, nor am I aware of how he lifted himself from the depths of ignorance he was in. But, with your permission, I'll continue in my own way, if you think it will entertain rather than tire you. Are you feeling better this morning? Much. That's good news. I brought Miss Catherine and myself to Thrushcross Grange, and to my pleasant surprise, she behaved far better than I had dared to hope. She seemed almost excessively fond of Mr. Linton, and even showed a generous amount of affection towards his sister. They both attended to her comfort with great care. It wasn't a case of the thorn bending to the honeysuckles, but rather the honeysuckles wrapping around the thorn. There were no compromises. One stood firm, while the others yielded. And truly, who can remain ill-tempered or disagreeable when faced with neither opposition nor indifference? I noticed that Mr. Edgar harboured a deep-seated fear of upsetting her mood. He kept this hidden from her, but whenever he heard me respond sharply, or saw another servant become sullen at one of her imperious commands, he would express his discontent with a frown that never appeared for his own sake. He often reprimanded me for my impudence, insisting that the pain he felt at seeing his wife distressed was as sharp as a knife wound. To avoid upsetting a kind master, I learned to be less sensitive, and for half a year the potential for conflict lay dormant, like gunpowder turned to sand, because nothing ignited it. Catherine occasionally fell into spells of gloom and silence, which her husband met with sympathetic quiet, attributing them to changes in her constitution brought on by her severe illness, as she had never been prone to such melancholy before. The return of her cheerfulness was met with equal warmth from him. I believe I can confidently say that they truly experienced a profound and expanding happiness. But it came to an end. Ultimately, we must prioritize ourselves. The gentle and kind-hearted are merely more subtly self-interested than the overbearing. It ended when circumstances led each to realize that their own interests were not the primary concern in the other's mind. On a warm September evening, I was returning from the garden with a heavy basket of apples I had been gathering. Dusk had settled, and the moon peeked over the high wall of the courtyard, casting vague shadows in the corners of the many jutting parts of the building. I placed my load on the steps by the kitchen door, paused to rest, and inhaled a few more breaths of the soft, sweet air. My eyes were fixed on the moon, my back to the entrance, when I heard a voice behind me say, "Nellie, is that you?" It was a deep voice, foreign in its tone. Yet there was something in the way my name was spoken that made it sound familiar. I turned around to see who had spoken, apprehensive, for the doors were closed and I had seen no one as I approached the steps. Something moved in the porch. As I stepped closer, I made out a tall man, dressed in dark clothes, with a dark face and hair. He leaned against the side, his fingers on the latch, as if he intended to open the door himself. Who could it be? I wondered. Mr. Earnshaw? Oh, no. That voice doesn't sound like his at all. I've been waiting here for an hour, he continued as I kept staring at him. And during that entire time, everything around me has been as silent as the grave. I didn't dare go inside. Don't you recognize me? Look, I'm no stranger. A sliver of light revealed his face. His cheeks were pale, partly obscured by dark whiskers. His brows were heavy, and his eyes were deep-set and striking. I remembered those eyes. "What?" I exclaimed, unsure whether to see him as a visitor from this world, raising my hands in astonishment. "What? You've come back? Is it really you? Is it?" "Yes, Heathcliff," he answered, casting a glance from me to the windows, which reflected dozens of shimmering moons, but showed no lights within. "Are they home? Where is she? Nellie, you're not pleased. You don't need to be so unsettled. Is she here?" "Speak! I need a word with her. Your mistress. Go, tell her someone from Gimmerton wants to see her." "How will she react?" I exclaimed. "What will she do? This surprise is overwhelming. It might drive her mad. And you are Heathcliff, but changed. I can't make sense of it. Have you been a soldier?" "Deliver my message," he interrupted impatiently. "I'm in torment until you do." He lifted the latch, and I stepped inside. But when I reached the parlour where Mr. and Mrs. Linton were, I hesitated. Finally, I decided to make an excuse, asking if they wanted the candles lit, and I opened the door. They sat together by a window, its lattice open against the wall, revealing the garden trees and the wild green park, with the valley of Gimmerton stretching out, a long line of mist winding nearly to its peak. For soon after passing the chapel, as you might have noticed, the stream from the marshes joins a brook that follows the glen's curve. Wuthering Heights loomed above this silvery mist, but our old house was hidden, dipping down on the other side. Both the room and its occupants, and the scene they observed, appeared wonderfully serene. I hesitated to deliver my message. I was about to leave without saying it after asking about the candles, when a sense of duty forced me to return and mutter, "A person from Gimmerton wishes to see you, ma'am." "What does he want?" Mrs. Linton asked. "I didn't ask him," I replied. "Well, close the curtains, Nellie," she instructed, "and bring up some tea. I'll be back shortly." She left the room, and Mr. Edgar asked with a touch of indifference who it was. "Someone the mistress wasn't expecting," I answered. "It's Heathcliff. You remember him, sir. He used to live with Mr. Earnshaw." "What? The gypsy? The farmhand?" he exclaimed. "Why didn't you tell Catherine?" "Hush! You shouldn't call him those names, sir," I cautioned. "It would deeply upset her. She was nearly heartbroken when he left. I imagine his return will be a cause for celebration for her." Mr. Linton walked over to a window on the opposite side of the room that overlooked the courtyard. He opened it and leaned out. I suppose they were down there, for he quickly called out, "Don't stand there, love. Bring the person in if it's someone important." Soon, I heard the latch click, and Catherine burst upstairs, breathless and wild, too overwhelmed to even show happiness. In fact, her expression suggested some terrible disaster had occurred. "Oh, Edgar! Edgar!" she gasped, throwing her arms around his neck. "Oh, Edgar, darling! Heathcliff's back. He really is." She tightened her embrace with fervour. "All right, all right," her husband replied irritably. "Don't choke me over it. He never seemed like such a remarkable find to me. There's no reason to get hysterical." "I know you didn't like him," she said, tempering her excitement a bit. "But for my sake, you must be friends now. Should I invite him up?" "Here," he replied. "Into the living room?" "Where else?" she asked. He looked annoyed and suggested the kitchen as a more fitting place for him. Mrs. Linton regarded him with an amused expression, half angry, half amused at his fussiness. "No," she said after a moment. "I can't sit in the kitchen. Set up 2 tables here, Ellen. One for your master and Miss Isabella, as they are the gentry, the other for Heathcliff and me, as we are of the lower class. Does that suit you, dear? Or should I have a fire lit elsewhere? If so, just say the word. I'll go down and bring our guest. I fear this joy is too overwhelming to be true." She was about to rush off again, but Edgar stopped her. "You ask him to come up," he instructed me, "and, Catherine, try to be happy without being ridiculous. The entire household doesn't need to witness you greeting a runaway servant as if he were your brother." I went downstairs and found Heathcliff waiting under the porch, clearly expecting an invitation to come in. He followed my lead without a word, and I brought him into the presence of the master and mistress, whose flushed faces hinted at a heated discussion. But the lady's face lit up with a different emotion when her friend appeared at the door. She rushed forward, took both his hands, and led him to Linton. Then she grabbed Linton's reluctant fingers and pressed them into Heathcliff's. Now fully visible in the fire and candlelight, I was more astonished than ever by Heathcliff's transformation. He had become a tall, athletic, well-built man, beside whom my master seemed quite slender and youthful. His upright posture suggested he might have been in the army. His face bore an expression and decisiveness far beyond Mr. Linton's. It appeared intelligent, with no trace of past degradation. A semi-tamed wildness lingered in his lowered brows and eyes that burned with dark intensity, yet it was restrained. His demeanour was dignified, stripped of coarseness, though still too stern to be graceful. My master's astonishment matched or surpassed mine. He hesitated, unsure how to address the young man he had once dismissed as a mere ploughboy. Heathcliff let his slight hand fall and stood, observing him coolly until he decided to speak. "Please, have a seat," he finally said. Mrs. Linton, reminiscing about the past, insisted I offer you a warm welcome. Naturally, I'm pleased when anything brings her joy. "And I as well," Heathcliff replied, "especially if it involves me. I'll gladly stay for an hour or two." He settled into a chair opposite Catherine, who watched him intently, as if afraid he might disappear if she looked away. He seldom met her gaze directly. A brief glance now and then sufficed, but each time it returned more assuredly, reflecting the unhidden delight he drew from her eyes. They were so engrossed in their shared happiness that they felt no awkwardness. Edgar's face turned pale with sheer irritation, a feeling that reached its peak when his wife stood up, crossed the rug, took Heathcliff's hands once more, and laughed as if she were out of her mind. "Tomorrow, I'll think this was all a dream," she exclaimed. "I won't be able to believe that I've seen, touched, and spoken to you again. And yet, cruel Heathcliff, you don't deserve this kind of welcome. To be gone and silent for 3 years, without a thought for me." "I thought of you a little more than you thought of me," he murmured. "I only recently heard about your marriage, Cathy. While waiting in the yard, I came up with this plan, just to catch a glimpse of your face, maybe see a look of surprise and feigned happiness, then settle my score with Hindley, and finally escape the law by ending it all myself. Your welcome has driven those thoughts away. But be careful how you greet me next time. No, you won't push me away again. Were you truly sorry for me? Well, you had reason to be. I've battled through a harsh life since I last heard your voice. You must forgive me, for I fought only for you." "Catherine, unless we want our tea to go cold, please come to the table," interrupted Linton, trying to maintain his usual tone and a semblance of politeness. "Mr. Heathcliff has quite a track ahead of him, wherever he plans to stay tonight, and I'm feeling parched." She positioned herself in front of the urn, and Miss Isabella entered, summoned by the bell. After arranging their chairs, I exited the room. The meal barely lasted 10 minutes. Catherine's cup remained empty. She couldn't bring herself to eat or drink. Edgar had spilled tea into a saucer and barely consumed a bite. The guest didn't linger more than an hour that evening. As he left, I inquired if he was heading to Gimmerton. "No, to Wuthering Heights," he replied. "Mr. Earnshaw invited me when I stopped by this morning." Mr. Earnshaw invited him? And he visited Mr. Earnshaw? I mulled over this statement uneasily after he departed. Is he playing the hypocrite, coming here under false pretenses to cause trouble? I wondered, feeling a deep-seated intuition that it might have been better if he had stayed away. Around the middle of the night, I was jolted awake from my first sleep by Mrs. Linton slipping into my room. She sat beside me on the bed and tugged at my hair to wake me. I can't rest, Ellen, she said, as if to explain. I need some living soul to share my joy. Edgar's sulking because I'm happy about something he doesn't care for. He won't speak except to make petulant, silly remarks. He called me cruel and selfish for wanting to talk when he's feeling unwell and sleepy. He always manages to fall ill at the slightest upset. I mentioned a few kind words about Heathcliff, and whether it was a headache or a stab of jealousy, he started to cry. So I got up and left him. Why praise Heathcliff to him? I replied. They disliked each other as boys, and Heathcliff would hate hearing Edgar praised just as much. It's human nature. Leave Mr. Linton out of it, unless you want an outright quarrel between them. But doesn't that show great weakness? She continued. I'm not envious. I never feel hurt by Isabella's golden hair, her fair skin, her delicate grace, or the affection the whole family showers on her. Even you, Nellie. When we have our disagreements, you immediately side with Isabella, and like a foolish mother, I give in. I call her a darling and coax her back into a good mood. Her brother is pleased when we get along, and that makes me happy too. But they're quite similar, spoiled children who think the world revolves around them. Even though I indulge them both, I believe a firm hand might do them some good. You're mistaken, Mrs. Linton, I replied. It's they who indulge you. I know what would happen if they didn't. You can afford to cater to their whims because their main concern is fulfilling your every wish. However, you might eventually clash over something important to both of you, and then those you consider weak can be just as stubborn as you. And then we'll fight to the bitter end, won't we, Nellie? She said, laughing. No, I have such faith in Linton's love that I believe I could kill him and he still wouldn't want revenge. I advised her to cherish him more for his devotion. I do, she replied, but he doesn't need to whine over trivial matters. It's immature. Instead of breaking down in tears, because I mentioned that Heathcliff is now deserving of anyone's respect, and that it would be an honour for the finest gentleman in the land to befriend him, he should have echoed my sentiment and been pleased out of empathy. He needs to get used to Heathcliff, and he might as well start liking him. Given how Heathcliff has every reason to hold a grudge against him, I think he behaved remarkably well. What do you make of his visits to Wuthering Heights? I asked. He seems reformed in every way. Practically a model Christian, extending the hand of friendship to all his former foes. He explained it, she answered. I'm as curious as you are. He said he went there to gather information about me from you, assuming you still lived there. And Joseph informed Hindley, who came out and started questioning him about his activities and lifestyle. Eventually, Hindley invited him inside. There were some people playing cards. Heathcliff joined them, and my brother lost some money to him. Seeing that Heathcliff was well off, he asked him to return in the evening, to which Heathcliff agreed. Hindley is too careless to choose his acquaintances wisely. He doesn't bother to consider why he might distrust someone he's wronged so deeply. But Heathcliff claims his main reason for reconnecting with his old tormentor is a desire to be close to the Grange and a fondness for the house where we once lived together. He also hopes that being nearby will give me more chances to see him than if he settled in Gimmerton. He plans to offer generous payment for the privilege of lodging at the Heights, and no doubt my brother's greed will lead him to accept the offer. He's always been grasping, though what he seizes with one hand, he throws away with the other. It's quite the spot for a young man to settle down, I remarked. Aren't you worried about the consequences, Mrs. Linton? Not for my friend, she answered. His strong mind will keep him safe. I worry a bit for Hindley, but he can't really get any worse morally, and I stand between him and any physical harm. Tonight's events have reconciled me with God and humanity. I had been in angry rebellion against Providence. Oh, Nellie, I've suffered terribly, terribly. If that man knew how deep the pain was, he'd be ashamed to darken its passing with petty irritability. It was out of kindness for him that I endured it alone. If I had shown the agony I often felt, he would have longed for relief as much as I did. But it's over now, and I won't seek revenge for his foolishness. I can endure anything from here on out. If the lowest creature alive were to slap me, I'd not only turn the other cheek, but I'd apologize for provoking it. To prove it, I'll go make peace with Edgar right away. Good night. I'm an angel. With this self-satisfied conviction, she left, and the success of her resolve was clear the next day. Mr. Linton had not only let go of his irritability, though his spirits were still somewhat dampened by Catherine's lively energy, but he raised no objection to her taking Isabella to Wuthering Heights that afternoon. In return, she showered him with such a summer of sweetness and affection that the house became a paradise for several days, with both master and servants basking in the constant sunshine. Heathcliff, now Mr. Heathcliff, began visiting Thrushcross Grange with a cautious air, as if testing the limits of his welcome. Catherine, too, wisely tempered her enthusiasm at his visits, and over time he established a regular presence there. He retained much of the reserve that had marked his youth, which kept any overt displays of emotion in check. This brought a temporary calm to my master's unease, which was soon redirected by other events. A new source of distress emerged unexpectedly when Isabella Linton developed a sudden, overwhelming attraction to the now accepted guest. At 18, Isabella was a delightful young woman with a childlike demeanor, but sharp wit, intense emotions, and a fierce temper when provoked. Her brother, who adored her, was horrified by her whimsical infatuation. Beyond the disgrace of marrying a man without a name, there was the risk that his estate, lacking male heirs, might fall into such hands. He understood Heathcliff's nature well enough to know that, despite any changes in appearance, his mind remained constant and unyielding. That mind filled him with dread. He recoiled at the thought of entrusting Isabella to it. His horror would have deepened had he known her feelings were uninvited and unreturned. For as soon as he realized her affection, he blamed Heathcliff for manipulating her. We had all noticed for some time that Miss Linton was troubled and wasting away over something. She became irritable and tiresome, constantly snapping at Catherine and testing her patience, which was already thin. We made allowances for her behavior, attributing it to her declining health. She seemed to be wasting away before our eyes. But one day, after a particularly difficult morning where she refused breakfast, complained about the servants not following her orders, accused the mistress of rendering her insignificant in the household, and claimed Edgar ignored her. She also blamed a cold on the open doors. and insisted we let the parlour fire die just to spite her, along with a slew of other trivial grievances. Mrs. Linton finally put her foot down, insisting she go to bed, and after stern reprimand, threatened to call the doctor. The mere mention of Dr. Kenneth made her immediately declare her health was fine, and that it was Catherine's harshness that made her miserable. "How can you accuse me of being harsh, you silly child?" the mistress exclaimed, astonished by the baseless claim. "You must be losing your mind. When have I ever been harsh? Tell me." "Yesterday," Isabella sobbed, "and now." "Yesterday," her sister-in-law repeated incredulously. "On what occasion?" "During our walk on the moor. You told me to wander wherever I liked, while you strolled with Mr. Heathcliff." "And that's what you call harshness?" Catherine laughed. "It wasn't a suggestion that your presence was unwanted. We didn't mind if you stayed or left. I just assumed Heathcliff's conversation wouldn't interest you." "Oh, no," the young lady cried. "You wanted me gone because you knew I enjoyed being there." "Is she in her right mind?" Mrs. Linton asked me, seeking confirmation. "I'll recount our conversation word for word, Isabella, and you can point out anything that might have appealed to you." "I don't care about the conversation," she replied. "I wanted to be with—" "Well?" Catherine prompted, noticing her reluctance to finish the thought. "With him, and I won't always be sent away," she continued, her spirit rising. "You're like a dog in the manger, Cathy, wanting no one to be loved but yourself." "You're an audacious little thing," Mrs. Linton exclaimed, clearly taken aback. "But I refuse to accept this nonsense. It's unthinkable that you could desire Heathcliff's admiration, that you find him appealing. Surely I've misunderstood you, Isabella." "No, you haven't," replied the smitten girl. "Yeah, I love him more deeply than you ever loved Edgar, and he might love me too, if you'd allow it. I wouldn't trade places with you for anything," Catherine declared with conviction, her sincerity evident. "Nellie, help me show her the folly of her ways. Tell her what Heathcliff truly is. An untamed soul, lacking refinement, lacking cultivation, a barren landscape of thorns and stone. I'd sooner release that little canary into the park on a winter's day than suggest you give your heart to him. It's a tragic misunderstanding of his nature, child, nothing more, that fuels this fantasy. Don't fool yourself into thinking he hides a well of kindness and love beneath a harsh exterior. He's not a diamond in the rough, a pearl within a rustic shell. He's a fierce, merciless, wolf-like man. I never tell him, spare this or that enemy because it would be ungenerous or cruel. I say, spare them because I would despise seeing them wronged. And he'd crush you like a sparrow's egg, Isabella, if you became a burden. I know he couldn't love a Linton. Yet he'd have no qualms about marrying you for your wealth and prospects. Greed is becoming his dominant vice. There's my perspective, and I'm his friend. So much so that if he had genuinely intended to ensnare you, I might have kept silent and let you walk right into his trap." Miss Linton looked at her sister-in-law with indignation. "For shame! For shame!" she repeated angrily. "You're worse than 20 enemies, you treacherous friend." "Ah, so you won't believe me then?" said Catherine. You think I'm speaking out of wicked selfishness? I'm certain you are, Isabella retorted, and I shudder at you. Fine, cried the other. Go ahead and see for yourself if that's your attitude. I'm done, and I leave the argument to your brazen insolence. And I must suffer for her self-centeredness, she sobbed as Mrs. Linton left the room. Everything is against me. She's ruined my one comfort. But she was lying, wasn't she? Mr. Heathcliff isn't a monster. He has an honourable soul, and a true one, or how could he remember her? Forget about him, miss, I advised. He's a harbinger of misfortune, not a suitable match for you. Mrs. Linton spoke with conviction, and I can't dispute her. She knows his heart better than anyone else, and she would never paint him worse than he truly is. Honest people don't conceal their actions. How has he been living? How did he come by his wealth? Why is he staying at Wuthering Heights, the home of a man he despises? They say Mr. Earnshaw has deteriorated since his arrival. They stay up all night together, and Hindley has been mortgaging his land, doing nothing but gambling and drinking. Just a week ago, Joseph told me. I ran into him at Gimmerton. Nellie, he said, we'll have a coroner's inquest soon, among our folks. One of them nearly got his finger cut off, trying to stop the other from stabbing himself like a fool. That's the master, you know, who's so eager to go to the grand assizes. He's not afraid of the bench of judges, nor Paul, nor Peter, nor John, nor Matthew, nor any of them. Not he. He actually longs to face them with his brazen demeanour. And that charming lad, Heathcliff, you remember, he's a character. He can grin and laugh at a devil's joke as well as anyone. Does he never mention his extravagant lifestyle with us when he visits the Grange? Here's how it goes. Up at sundown, playing dice, drinking brandy, with the shutters closed and candlelight until noon the next day. Then the fool stumbles off, cursing and raving to his room, making decent folks cover their ears in shame. Meanwhile, the rogue counts his money, eats, sleeps, and heads to his neighbours to gossip with the wife. Naturally, he tells Dame Catherine how her father's gold fills his pockets, while her brother races down the road to ruin, and he rushes ahead to open the gates. Now, Miss Linton, Joseph may be an old scoundrel, but he's no liar. If his account of Heathcliff's behaviour is true, you wouldn't consider wanting such a husband, would you? You're in cahoots with the others, Ellen, she retorted. I refuse to listen to your slanders. How spiteful you must be to try to convince me there's no happiness in the world. Whether she would have outgrown this notion if left alone, or continued to cling to it indefinitely, I cannot say. She had little time to ponder. The next day, there was a justice meeting in the nearby town, and which my master had to attend. Mr. Heathcliff, knowing he would be absent, arrived earlier than usual. Catherine and Isabella were in the library, at odds but silent. Isabella was anxious about her recent indiscretion and the revelation of her secret feelings that, in a fleeting moment of passion, Catherine, after careful thought, was genuinely upset with her companion. And if she laughed again at her impudence, she was inclined to make sure it was no laughing matter for her. She laughed as she saw Heathcliff pass by the window. I was sweeping the hearth and caught a mischievous smile playing on her lips. Isabella, lost in her thoughts or perhaps a book, stayed put until the door opened. By then, it was too late to make an escape, though she would have gladly done so if she could. "Come in," That's perfect!" the mistress exclaimed cheerfully, pulling a chair closer to the fire. "Here are two people desperately in need of a third to break the ice between them, and you are exactly who we both would choose. Heathcliff, I'm proud to finally show you someone who adores you even more than I do. You should feel flattered. No, it's not Nellie. Don't look at her. My poor little sister-in-law is practically breaking her heart just contemplating your physical and moral beauty. It's within your power to become Edgar's brother. No, no, Isabella, you won't run off," she continued, playfully restraining the flustered girl, who had risen indignantly. "We were arguing like cats over you, Heathcliff, and I was thoroughly defeated in declarations of devotion and admiration. Moreover, I was told that if I would just step aside, my rival, as she insists on being, would shoot an arrow into your soul that would bind you forever and banish my image to eternal oblivion." "Catherine," said Isabella, summoning her dignity and refusing to struggle against the firm grip that held her, "I'd appreciate it if you'd stick to the truth and not slander me even in jest. Mr. Heathcliff, would you kindly instruct your friend here to let me go? She seems to forget that you and I are not close, and what she finds amusing is deeply distressing to me." Heathcliff, showing no reaction, simply took his seat, appearing utterly indifferent to her feelings. She turned to her captor, whispering a desperate plea for freedom. "Absolutely not!" Mrs. Linton exclaimed in response. "I refuse to be called a dog in a manger again. You will stay right here. Now, Heathcliff, why aren't you showing any delight at my good news? Isabella insists that the love Edgar has for me pales in comparison to what she feels for you. I'm sure she said something like that, didn't she, Ellen? And she's been fasting since the day before yesterday's walk, out of grief and anger because I sent her away from your company, thinking it was unwelcome." "I believe you're misrepresenting her," Heathcliff replied, turning his chair to face them. "She certainly wants to be away from me now, at least." He stared at her as if she was some bizarre, repulsive creature, like an exotic centipede that one examines out of curiosity despite the revulsion it provokes. Unable to endure his gaze, she flushed and paled in quick succession. Tears gathered on her lashes as she struggled to pry Catherine's firm grip from her arm. Realizing that as soon as she freed one finger, another would clamp down, she resorted to using her nails, leaving red crescent marks on her captor's skin. "There's a tigress!" cried Mrs. Linton, releasing her grip and shaking her hand in pain. "Go away, for heaven's sake, and hide that sly face of yours. How foolish to show those claws to him. Can't you imagine what conclusions he'll draw? Look, Heathcliff, those are tools that can do real damage. You must be careful with your eyes." "I'd rip them off with her fingers if they ever threatened me," he replied harshly, once the door had closed behind her. "But what were you doing, Cathy, provoking her like that? You weren't being truthful, were you?" "I assure you, I was," she replied. "She's been pining for you for weeks, raving about you this morning, and unleashing a torrent of insults, because I pointed out your flaws clearly, hoping to temper her infatuation. But don't give it another thought. I just wanted to curb her impudence, that's all. I like her too much, my dear Heathcliff, to let you completely consume her. And I dislike her too much to even try. he said, except in a rather monstrous way. You'd hear of strange things if I lived alone with that insipid, pale face. The most mundane would be painting it with all the colours of the rainbow and turning those blue eyes black every few days. They disgustingly resemble Linton's. Exquisite, Catherine remarked. They are like the eyes of doves, angelic. She's her brother's heir, isn't she? He inquired after a brief pause. I would hate to think so, her companion replied. May half a dozen nephews come along to raise her claim? God willing. Let's steer your mind away from this topic for now. You have a tendency to covet what belongs to others. Remember, this neighbour's possessions are mine. If they were mine, they would still be the same, Heathcliff responded. But though Isabella Linton may be foolish, she's not entirely mad. So let's drop the subject, as you suggest. They let the matter go from their lips, and Catherine lightly from her mind. The other, I was sure, revisited it frequently throughout the evening. I noticed him smiling to himself, more of a smirk, and slipping into dark contemplation whenever Mrs. Linton left the room. I resolved to keep an eye on his actions. My loyalty always leaned towards the master rather than Catherine, with good reason, I believed, for he was kind, trustworthy, and honourable, and she, though not exactly the opposite, seemed to allow herself such freedom that I had little faith in her principles, and even less empathy for her emotions. I longed for something to occur that might rid both Wuthering Heights and the Grange of Mr. Heathcliff, quietly restoring us to how we were before his arrival. His visits were a relentless nightmare for me, and I suspected they were for my master as well. His presence at the Heights was a burden beyond explanation. It felt as though God had abandoned the lost soul there to its own wicked paths, while a malevolent creature lurked between it and salvation, biding its time to pounce and destroy.